Hello AP students, we are on our section 5.1 Industrial Revolution Part 1, and let's dig into our vocabulary. Our first word is what our next two chapters are all about. It is the Industrial Revolution. And right here you can see a pretty good definition right there. I'll take some of that. The Industrial Revolution is the name given to the movement in which machines changed people's way of life as well as their methods of manufacture. So this happens about the time of the American Revolution, so about 1770s in England, and this is when they start to use machines to make cloth and steam, and this really starts because of the discovery of coal. This is incredibly historically significant. This is like one of the most biggest changes, that didn't make sense, one of the biggest changes in human history since the Neolithic Revolution. Basically, the whole process of making goods goes from being handmade, people making them by hand, to machines making them. This will create machines, computers, factories, all the things that we have today that are not made by hand, which is almost everything. So significant that it affects us to today because most of the goods we have after the Industrial Revolution are made by machines. Incredibly historically significant, a big, huge change in human history. Our next term is Europe's location on the Atlantic. Here is the Atlantic Ocean right there. This is Europe right there. So Europe, especially Western Europe, being located near the Atlantic Ocean, gave Europe access to ports and oceans to go out and get raw materials from other parts of the world like Africa, the Americas that we'll talk about in this chapter, but also lets them, once they have their goods produced in the Industrial Revolution made by machine, they can then ship these out to many locations all over the world. One of the advantages that Europe had in the Industrial Revolution, and many countries in Europe have access that is close to the Atlantic Ocean. And there's where it all begins right there, United Kingdom, Britain, right here. Coal and iron were two of the minerals most responsible for the Industrial Revolution, especially coal in the beginning because it's burned and it's used to make steam power, which starts the Industrial Revolution and the factory system, and iron, which can be used with coal to make steel, which is used for many of the goods that come up a little bit later in the Industrial Revolution. So coal and iron are two minerals that are very valuable, found a lot in Britain, which they are able to use and access to get the Industrial Revolution going. Significant because the Industrial Revolution will reach pretty much every part of the world over the next 100 years and will make sure that we are pretty much having goods that are produced by machine, not by hand. The bourgeois class, or sometimes seen the bourgeoisie, is basically a growing middle class that developed in Europe. These were people who were not noble, they were not nobility by name or rank, but they are people who actually earned their money by starting businesses and factories often in the Industrial Revolution. So these are people who started like private companies, were able to get them going, build these big factories, and all of a sudden in the Industrial Revolution, many of them were making a ton of money and were even richer than the former nobility on top. So the bourgeois are like basically capitalists, people who are out there to make a profit. They want to start their factories and they are able to make money, and they employ a lot of people in their factories, sometimes for making very little money to make these industrial goods that will be made all around the world. They profit and make a lot of money off of the Industrial Revolution. Very significant because they changed the social structure that had existed in Europe and the United States. And basically what it means is the people who start to become really rich are the people who have more business sense and are able to start factories, not just people who are nobility or are given a title. Also, there's some protest against them as they will get a lot of money and have people work in their factories who in some cases don't make hardly any money at all and are living in very bad conditions. That would be our bourgeois class. Agricultural surpluses in Europe. You can also put down agricultural revolution. Now, what basically happened was there were new ways of farming that began to happen in Europe. There were ways of rotating the crops by growing some crops in one field and switching them to another, new plows and ways to turn up the soil, which allowed them to get more production. The most important thing for you to know is these new crop methods allowed people to grow much more food, which meant a lot of the population didn't have to farm. They were able to move to cities, or they had to move to cities to find work, and this allowed there to be a food supply and a labor supply to start working in the factories in the Industrial Revolution. This kind of separates Europe from China in some ways, because Europe has this population moving to the cities who's able to work in the factories. The Industrial Revolution is really able to get going. It's one of the biggest reasons why the Industrial Revolution takes place in Europe at this time, because of the agricultural surplus they have. They can feed their people, and they can feed people and have them work in factories making all these goods to produce. Britain's economic practices in the Industrial Revolution. We already know that Britain was able to start joint stock companies like the British East Indian Company. Well, basically Britain had banking that was established, which really helped the Industrial Revolution. This let individuals, like in the bourgeois class, who were able to take out money and take out loans to start their businesses, to start building a factory. You didn't have to have the money individually to start a factory. You could take a loan from the bank, get that money, start your factory up, and then make the payments back to the bank. This is also really unique in Britain, because places like France, the government controlled more things that were going on. They didn't let people start their own private businesses. This also didn't happen in China either. So having this banking system and allowing people to take out loans, individuals, and to start their own factories allows the Industrial Revolution to begin Britain, and allows many people to make a whole lot of money off starting these factories. One possible negative of this is that many people have to work in these factories, which are not the best conditions and in many cases are unsafe. But this is very significant because Britain is the place where the Industrial Revolution starts. They have the materials, but they also have a system with banks that will borrow people money and will let people start factories to producing a lot of these goods, which begins the Industrial Revolution. Here we see a map of rivers and canals in Britain. Canals are in orange, and the rivers are in blue. And what you first notice on this is there's a lot of rivers and a lot of canals, just a ton. Very important, because that allows transportation to take place in Britain, which allows people who own factories to move their goods from one place to another in the Industrial Revolution. So if you're making goods, you can ship them over to Britain and sell them, and you can even get them to the harbors, which are up here and down here, where you can sell these goods to the rest of the world. So transportation was a very big factor in moving goods in the Industrial Revolution. Steam power. Steam power is huge because burning coal allows them to get steam from water, and this steam is used to move the turbines in a lot of the factories to get the factories working in the Industrial Revolution. Many of the inventions, like the nuclear engine, start because of steam power. Steam power is also used by burning coal to get trains, which will later be used in the second part of the Industrial Revolution, which also spreads to America and Europe. So steam is like this big power that makes the trains go, makes the factories go, and helps the Industrial Revolution start and transport the goods of the Industrial Revolution. Very significant, because this will mean that the factories can start, basically, the trains can start, the goods can be produced and made in the Revolution. All right, let's move on to our next word. All right, APers, I made a mistake here. I put steam power twice. Please change the second steam power. Pause the video if you need to. Cross it out and write down Newcomen steam engine. So write down there, Newcomen steam engine. Let's take a look at it. Oh my God, that picture's moving. Wow, the special effects are fantastic on these videos. All right. The hell was I talking about again? Oh yeah, the Newcomen steam engine. There it is. Impressive. All right, so basically this is an early steam engine that is invented, and with it they're able to get access to coal that's much deeper in the ground, and they're able to, as you can see here, move a tiny little factory. You can move things back and forth. Yeah, that's how my technical knowledge of it. So anyway, what that's able to do is this is basically able to get the factory system going. The nuclear steam engine is one of these inventions that allow them to get coal, allow them to burn it, allow them to get these reactions to make the turbines turn, which gets the factories that can produce goods in the Industrial Revolution moving. That is the nuclear steam engine, and look at that. Yeah, special effects, man. Pretty awesome. All right, our next word is the flying shuttle. Basically going to go with our definition we got here from AP Worldopedia. The flying shuttle is an invention that carried threads of yarn back and forth when the weaver pulled a handle, and this increased the weaver's productivity. Here we have a shuttle, basically a small little invention they put in there, which would make it go back and forth, and would make the weaver much, much, much more productive, which meant there were more textiles that were produced during this time. It helped the weavers basically be able to move much faster. It produced more cloth and more goods, which were made by machines, which meant basically more goods, more textiles, shirts, clothing, blankets, could be sold during the Industrial Revolution. The spinning jenny, also weaving textiles, okay, so cloth, clothes, blankets. The spinning jenny allowed one spinner to work on 8 threads at a time. So not just doing one thread trying to weave it, but 8 of them, which means one worker is now 8 times more productive. It's a pretty big deal. It means you can produce 8 times as much cloth. It doesn't cost as much because you're not paying people, so you can have more cloth, it can be cheaper, and you can make more of a profit. So that means the spinning jenny means that there's more people, it's not less people working in cloth, it's actually more people working in cloth, and they're producing a whole ton of it. And now Britain at first and other countries can sell this cloth all over the world. The water frame is a lot like our spinning jenny that we just talked about, except for instead of having people move by hand so they could get the cloth through, they could move it by using water or steam, which would then allow it to be produced much faster. So what happens in this, we see this trend with the inventions, is that the water mule gets steam in there, it allows you to use water to make it even faster, and what that does is everything with these textiles is they're able to produce more and faster, which makes cheaper for the textiles that they're going to produce. We'll get to our last one here, and that would be the spinning mule. So what the spinning mule basically does is it combines the features of the spinning jenny and the water frame. So spinning jenny, water frame, and it makes threads stronger, finer, and more consistent than earlier machines. So what we're seeing again in all of these is eventually now we have, okay, a spinning mule basically takes the combination of everything, and you now have in a large factory system people who are able to produce a whole lot of cloth. And the spinning mule is basically, in 1779, a faster way to get this done with all their textiles. Second Industrial Revolution is a larger part of the Industrial Revolution. The first major part of this is the technological revolution, where we're able to see steel come in. And once steel comes in, we're able to get things like the railroads, more steel ships, producing even more technological goods. This happens at the end of the 19th century, the end of the 1800s until World War I. It also involves more, the United States gets involved, Germany, Russia, also Japan become part of the Industrial Revolution as well. So it becomes more of a global phenomenon, and it has a lot more to do with steel. And the second part happens from about, United States anyway, 1870 to 1914. That's roughly a time period. You could say late 1800s into the early 1900s is the second Industrial Revolution. And again, a lot more steel is produced. The Bessemer process, this was the first process that was used to make steel in the Industrial Revolution. Basically, it would be, you take it, iron, use coal, burn it up, and you do a combination of how you made it at the right temperature to get steel produced, which could be used for railroad tracks, making the railroad cars, anything else, steamboats, ships, everything that could be made with steel, which was part of the Second Industrial Revolution. We're out of time, so we're going to have another video to finish these vocab words. See you guys in a little bit.